Ideal Protein is a doctor-designed, coach-led ketogenic weight loss protocol that uses food as medicine to empower you to lose weight and live your healthiest life.
And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news, and we've got a different setup for you guys out there today. I have two guests here. They're going to be strumming their guitars as we go through the first part, which is kind of a free-form interview. We're just going to be asking them a little bit about their musical careers. Then we're going to take a quick break and get set up because they've got a treat for y'all. They're going to be playing, hopefully if we have enough time, 2 songs here in the booth. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves real quick. Will, let's start with you.
Hey, my name is Will Wesley. I'm a singer-songwriter from right here in Walker, Livingston Parish area.
Yeah, my name's Phil Chandler. I'm a record producer, singer-songwriter, business partner to Will Wesley, and I'm from Denham Springs, born and raised right there by the high school.
Okay. So you grew up in Cockrem Acres, huh?
Pretty much right there, right behind that Jiffy Mart that's right there at the corner of Range and Cockrem. That's where I grew up.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So, yeah, you a local boy. We're not far from there right now. So let's talk a little bit about y'all have an interesting history in the musical genre. Will, we're going to start with you real quick because your story's pretty fun. You started off, you're a Baker kid,
Yes.
but you moved here.
I did.
And tell us a little bit about what happened after you moved here.
Well, after I moved to Livingston Parish, I really started getting into guitar playing. My dad was a guitar player. So I started really, really working hard to try to outdo my own father on guitar, which
Sure.
took a little time. But, and before long, I started taking lessons from Jody Mayu right here in Walker. And before everything, after I started getting pretty good, I started playing out live at a very young age. And pretty much from that point on, it was just live gigs and touring and performing,
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Jody. I mean, a lot of people know Jody. Jody's kind of a musical staple here in the Livingston Parish
Yes.
area. How did y'all get connected?
Well, my dad actually got to a point where he was like, look, I've taken you as far as I can go as a guitar player, and you need to learn theory and you need to learn things such, as, proper phrasing and things like that. So he had heard about Jody because Jody used to actually teach out of Mark's Music. I don't know if y'all remember Mark's
Sure.
years ago, but Jody had just opened his shop. So my dad actually sent me there to try to kind of get me started, and get more theory under my belt. So that's how I learned about him.
So when you moved here, a lot of things going on. You're trying to outdo your dad. You're trying to learn a little bit of theory. But at the same time, you also wanted that, I guess you can call it real world experience, right? So
Yes.
there's a little part of your story where after you moved here, you started, you grew a beard, right?
I did.
You grew a beard and you started sneaking into gigs, right?
I did, yes.
So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, after I started taking a couple of years of lessons, Jody basically told me, he was like, look, you could either A, keep taking lessons and getting better and better, but never have any experience playing out. Or he said, I think you ought to just break into the live scene right now. Well, I was like, Jody, I'm too young. He's like, well, figure it out, overcome it. So the only thing I could think to do, I was one of the only kids in my class that can grow a beard. So I would grow the longest beard I could for that age. And people would assume that I'm like 19, 20 when I would go in these bars. So it was helping me to get in there and play and get my feet wet at a very young age. It kind of gave me a first-class education of how it is in the live scene. It's very different from a teaching room, so to speak.
Sure.
Ooh.
So, when you're talking about the differences between a live scenario and a teaching room and really even a studio like we're in today, give us your first impression on what it was like that first time you got up on stage and you had to play.
That is a very funny story. The first place I've ever played in Baton Rouge was a place called Buddy Stewart's Rock Shop. It was off of the Acadian, like taken right off of Florida on Acadian. This was at the time, it's not open anymore, but it was known as one of the dangerous, most rough places you can go to play in Baton Rouge. And
What a way to start.
yeah, like when I got there, they had the likes of Kenny Neal playing there. They had Larry Garner, all these, well-known bluesmen. And here comes this little white kid over there. Hey, I have my guitar. Can I play? I got cast into the world very quickly because it's kind of like sink or swim over there. So
Sure.
Yeah, so when I first got on stage over there, my face was so red. I was so nervous. I was throwing up behind the stage. I really was. But, it taught me how to deal with my nerves and how to, hey, if you're going to be a real musician, you got to hang with the best.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So, trial by fire.
Trial
for
by
you.
fire, baptism by fire. Yeah.
Phil, let's pop over to you. I mean, when we're talking about early musical life, what's your story?
Mine was more of just a regular baptism, I guess, because I grew up in a church around here, Amy Baptist, down towards Watson, Live Oak area, and I got started out just by seeing a kid play piano on the news, and I was like, I can do that. I can do that. I was like really young, so I asked for piano lessons, and I got really lucky because the first teacher I had was Regina Walker.
Okay.
Who recently just passed away. Fantastic musician, piano teacher, and got into choir with some of the people she was running with, like her daughters Barbara Walker and Melanie Rushing, who run the LPCC. Fantastic teachers. Like that's all I can say is I had fantastic teachers. I really lucked out because even after they taught me how to sing and find harmony and such, I got to move on to David Easley, who is a phenomenal piano player. He's the one who taught me all like the music theory, basically all the math behind the music, being able to just sit down and listen and be like, okay, I know what's going on now. I don't have to try and guess or anything. I know what's going on. He's responsible for that. So then moving on into church, when I actually got to get a guitar in my hand and sit up in front of people, musically, church teaches you two things. It teaches you how to learn songs quickly because you got to learn new songs every week. And it teaches you what to do when everything goes wrong. when the singer forgets to come in, or when the band gets off a little bit, it's like, what do? You are live now.
Right.
In front of everyone.
And so you have to either improvise or fix it quickly, right?
Exactly.
So
what's going on?
I got a quick question here. I have heard two very, very, very different musical backgrounds here.
Yep.
Yeah.
How did y'all find each other?
That is a very, very interesting story. We're just full of interesting stories.
It sounds like it.
As you can tell from the stories, it seems like Phil had a lot of formal teaching, and I kind of come from the street side of the teaching. But that being said, years into it, I'd had a band that had been traveling around with me for years. And my drummer at the time, I needed a bass player. And he kept telling me about this kid who was like a prodigy player. Kept saying, Phil Chandler. And I was like, I ain't got time. Well, finally, he just narrowed me down. My bass player really ticked me off one night, and I was like, I'm calling Phil. So I call Phil up, and I'm like, look, I've heard that you're a prodigy. I heard that you learn fast. Will you want to get together, join the group? And he's like, yeah, sure. And that was the dynamic how we met.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like, having learned from that church scenario and or scene, I guess you can call it, somebody who needed you to learn fast. It sounded like a match made in the studio, I guess you could say. I didn't want to say heaven. I didn't want to tread on your church background there. So, what was it like first gig y'all played together?
That was Under the Hill Saloon up in Natchez that we first played together.
You really okay? You know what? I'm gonna tell you the truth about it.
Oh, that was a fun gig.
I'm gonna tell you. I wake up the morning of the gig, and my drummer. This is hilarious. My drummer is having a meltdown. I've never actually played a gig with Phil. And I get a call saying from my drummer, my girlfriend stole my wallet.
Oh, no.
And I was like, look, man, I'm going to call Phil and tell him. I was like, please don't. Please don't. And he calls Phil, and I talked to Phil, and that's when I realized, me and Phil are going to get along just fine. He just played with it so cool. He was just like, hey, man.
Maybe it's in your car.
And
maybe you left your wallet somewhere else. Maybe your
That's
girlfriend didn't take it from you. She's like, she's helping me look for it. Like
she stole it, but she's helping me look for it. I was like, Jesus. Well, not wanting to rain on the parade there.
But yeah. So then he eventually finds his wallet in his car. We make it up to Natchez, and that's where we're playing, and Will's throwing me to the wolves as much as possible. He'll be like, hey man, you know this song, right? It's like, yeah. It's like, we're gonna do it in a completely different way than you've ever done it before. Let's roll.
I had so much fun on it.
And that was the night the Godfather got up there and sang with us. So
Yeah.
there's a little person up in Natchez. He's about 3 foot nothing. He's probably like 70 or 80 years old.
Yep.
Very old guy. They call him the Godfather. He's got his own little plaque in the bar in this old saloon and everything. And he comes up and wants to sing "House of the Rising Sun," and we're like, okay. So he grabs a bar stool, climbs up on top of this thing. So he's standing on a bar stool. And basically, he's screaming his heart out to "House of the Rising Sun." And that's when I'm looking at my guitar, and I'm looking back, and I look at my guitar, and all of a sudden, he's taking off his shirt, and the ladies in the crowd are going wild.
Absolutely crazy.
And
Absolutely
so
nuts.
he swirls it around, like waves it above his head, and then throws it out to the girls in the crowd. I was like,
He started to drop other parts of his clothing, but I assured him I could not continue to play if that happened. That was our first.
You made
thing
your
together.
needs clear.
It's like, look, you've expressed yourself. That's where we need
that
to
kind of
stop.
set the tone of playing with Will Wesley, to be perfectly honest. Where, I come from a very sane, stable background.
I don't.
And crazy things just swirl around Will all the time.
And so you have become your brother's keeper, so to speak.
Pretty much. I'm the one who's looking around going, where's Will? What is he up to? And he'll be on top of the bar lying on his back or something like that, having people pour shots into his mouth. And it's like, okay. Damage control.
I've got a bit of a reputation. I won't fight it.
Fair enough. And those of you who might be watching this, if you are listening, we have quite a bit of flair going on with Mr. Will Wesley over here. He had to take his rings off so he could play. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of personality. So as a band, y'all have clearly grown. Y'all are about to come out with an album, or y'all have come out with an album.
This Saturday.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
So, before we get into the album, I do want to ask you, what was it like after y'all have done gigs together, grown together, all of a sudden you were like, we want to do an album? What was that like?
Well, the way it started, I think from day one, me and Phil had an understanding that we were both songwriters that wanted to do an album. But over time, there was a brief time where we kind of went our separate ways. I'd kind of gotten in a relationship and was doing all that. And then when everything kind of settled down, I gave Phil a call and was like, look, we need to rejoin forces. We need to focus on the music. And that's when we started the collection of really two bodies of work, because I'd written one form of music before all this and then after it. So really we started coming up with the concept of coming out with a double album to really showcase both sides of that music, and that's where both sides of the tracks come from.
Gotcha. And it's an interesting album title because as you said, there's one side for, you see a lot of when you go to these country music concerts and shows, a lot more rock being introduced.
You do.
The lyrics are still the same, but they're getting a little more intense with it.
Yeah.
But then you have another side that's more sort of the traditional kind of country, right?
The album's really an embodiment of me. And what I mean by that is a side of me that wants to be mainstream and marketable, and a side of me that wants to preserve the classic sounds that I grew up listening to. So that's really what you're going to find on this record, a mixture of modern and old.
Gotcha. And Phil, what when y'all were talking through this, I mean, what was your guidance as y'all walked through how y'all wanted to put this together?
Well, my job kind of in this relationship is to basically Will's full of ideas, and my job's to kind of sift through these ideas and see which ones will work in the big collection of things. So when we were working on this record, he started off writing a bunch of rock stuff, a bunch of country stuff, and then when we had our hiatus, he had gone off and done a bunch of duo, Americana, folk stuff, and then it was like, okay, well, you've pretty much written 2 complete albums
Right.
here.
Right.
So, and even through the production of the album, he would sit there and be like, oh, I've got this song. I've got a song.
I write a lot of them.
And we got to do it on the album. And it's like, oh, okay, let's figure out how we're going to do this then. That really the crux of our relationship is you figuring out what you want to do and me figuring out how exactly we're going to
Phil, I
pull
wrote a
this
song
off.
on the way over here. I was wondering if we can perform it for the first time on this show, and maybe we can put it on the album that comes out.
It wouldn't be the first time, Will. It wouldn't be the first time.
I'm picking.
And for those of you who are just listening, Phil was rubbing his nose and kind of like, "Oh God, here we go again." So, I do want to talk a little bit about, what you brought up is it's very much like a business relationship, but obviously y'all have a friendship and a brotherly love there as well.
Yeah.
how complicated did it get when you started saying, okay, we want to put out an album because, I mean, that requires publishing, a record label, that kind of thing. So, as y'all are moving forward, it's like, okay, we have the idea, we have the songs, we have all this. Now we got to think about the business of actually
Yes.
doing this. What happened when y'all reached that point?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. A lot of that it was a growing process that actually I think a lot of our success in terms of the business side of it came, and I don't mean this in a gloomy way, but with the pandemic, we were forced to have to think of different ways of promoting ourselves. And I'm a bit of a fighter in the sense of I'm not gonna let adversity stop me. And when this happened, a lot of bands were in a bad place. There was nowhere to play, there was nowhere to go. And I
Mhm.
told Phil, I was like, look, we're going to build ourselves. We're going to be bigger coming out of this than we were going in. So we started focusing on the business. That's really when Homegrown Productions was formed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we basically said, we can't go out and play. That's one of the mainstays of our income is going out and playing live. And now we can't do that. So what we decided to do was we were at a certain point in the tracking of the record. So then we decided, okay, well, if we can't go out and do things in front of the scenes, we'll take everything we're doing behind the scenes and really turn that into a promotional thing. So every day it's like we're in the studio. Guess what? We're doing this. We're doing this now. And we started reaching out in other directions, like writing commercial jingles and
Yeah.
Cool.
stuff of
Yeah.
that nature, to where it was like, okay, now we're getting other money coming in, learning as a business what to do, tripping over some things sometimes. And
Diversifying your portfolio a little bit too. I mean,
Yes.
commercial jingles. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we've had a bit of a interesting run with that. I'll be honest. The first jingle we wrote was for was it Women in Fishing?
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
it was a women's targeted fishing blog called Rod and Reel Girls, and
But they didn't pay for it. They didn't pay
They
for
were
it.
like, we want this, and then that was the first time we learned it's like we need contracts and such up front before we
Right.
actually sit down and
Right.
write the music. It was a good jingle too.
It
That's
was
what
a
makes
great.
me
I
sad.
want to put it on the album. Let's put it on the album coming out Saturday.
That's the intro, right?
Yeah.
The
No,
women in real.
Yeah, but we started there, but then we just had a jingle come out for the television show out of Natchez, Redneck Adventures.
We also did a campaign song for Beryl Billiot, who was
Yeah.
running for Senate around here.
Wow.
Yeah, we did a
okay.
campaign
Okay.
song,
election.
actually. The Louisiana song, yeah.
So y'all took the pandemic as a chance to grow.
Absolutely.
You're not running from gig to gig at
Mm-mm.
bars and saloons and open houses and stuff like that. You had a chance to step back and say, okay, we can also do this, this, and this.
That's really the dynamic of how we form this business. And now that the pandemic is starting to lessen, I'm glad that we did it because now we're coming out stronger. We're going on tour a lot. There's talks of going overseas. We've been in numerous magazines and things like that. And it's all because, look, there are great musicians on every corner, but it's the musicians who understand the business that are going to move forward.
Right.
And that's just what we learned in this process.
Right.
So everybody else got quiet, and we got a little bit louder. So we started getting a little bit more attention.
Hey, those who adapt survive.
That's right.
Right.
It's either sink or swim.
It's the
man.
crux of this business.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what's the future hold for y'all? I know that you've already got a million ideas. There's more songs to come. Y'all are hoping, I'm guessing, to grow the brand.
Both. We got tours lined up under like Will West and everything, but Phil is also coming out with a brand new album you should talk about.
It's like, so what we're doing is we're becoming a two-pronged business, since he is a songwriter and a frontman in his own right, and he mainly writes country, Americana, folk, rock type stuff.
yeah.
I'm more of the I should say the rock, ska,
Okay.
islandy type vibe. So what I'm planning to do is coming out with a band called Sunny Shallows with an
Okay.
O instead of a U. And essentially it'll be to where, okay, we're gonna have tours. We're gonna have a tour where we'll go out and we'll play Will Wesley stuff, and then the next day we might play Sunny Shallows stuff. So we're really gonna be two punches off the same business, to where we can both go out, both each play our own material and grow together, really.
Absolutely.
And it keeps your options open.
It does for people because look, there's a big world out there, for people who are like, well, I'm not as into Will Wesley music. It's not my style. We'll have Sunny Shallows here, and it's really the same band with two of the same frontmen. It's just I take a back seat, he takes the front, and vice versa.
Sonny Shallow sounds a lot like Jimmy Buffett in Key West, huh?
I was kind of thinking that myself.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for a little bit more Sublime 311 type vibes, but
I'm in for
I
that.
agree
Maybe
with
you
you.
can bring it all together. So
exactly.
we are right where we wanted to be for you guys to do 2 songs. So anything you'd like to say in closing for the interview before we get set up for y'all to sing a little bit?
Yes, the new album drops this Saturday, April 24th. It's available on all of your favorite digital online stores, and physical copies are coming. And check us out at Will Wesley Music.
Anything you'd like to say, Phil, before we check out for just a minute?
Just want to say thank you to everybody who's been supporting us through this whole thing. You can check out Will's music on YouTube and Spotify and all of that. And I should have some new music coming out with Sonny Shallows very soon.
And again, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us today. I'm going to do my outro real quick because I'm going to let them play. So one last time, reintroduce yourself before we check out.
My name is Will Wesley. I'm a singer-songwriter from right here in Livingston Parish.
My name's Philip Chandler. I'm a record producer and also singer and songwriter from right here in Livingston Parish as well.
And we appreciate you guys out there joining the 3 of us this morning as we went through some interesting interesting stories and into an interesting album. And again, they're going to be singing for us in just a minute. Don't tune out. We're going to switch over that in just a second. Want to remind folks that the Livingston Parish News is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. Their story was in this Thursday's paper. And we're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. Stick around. We're going to be right back.
Called Would You Still Be Around? Well, it's late, and I'm driving past her house again to debate just why I'm here. She says she likes the way I play guitar, but that won't take it very far. Spinning my wheels. Everybody wants the same old thing. Fancy cars and diamond rings. There ain't no loyalty, cause you're selling out and you're breaking me. I can make $1 million bucks, buy the world over to a bus. Tell me when my world's coming down. Oh, tell me, would you still be around? Well, my heart has a history of falling hard for false starts and bedroom eyes. But these days, I'm cashing in on deeper feelings. I say there's no hope for you. Spinning my wheels. Everybody wants the same old thing. It's a card, a diamond ring. There ain't no loyalty, cause you're selling out and you're breaking me. I can make $1 million plus, buy the world for the 2 of us. And tell me when my world's coming down. Oh, tell me would you still be around? Spinning my wheels. Give it to me. Everybody wants the same old thing. Every car's diamond rings. There ain't no loyalty, cause you're selling out and you're breaking me. I can make $1 million bucks, buy the world for the 2 of us. Tell me when my world's going down. Oh, tell me would you still, tell me would you still, tell me would you still be around? Be around. Tell me would you still be around? Be around. Tell me would you still be around? And this next one is called The Shadows of Your Heart.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, I can see the game you're playing. You're faking love and picking apart my way. You're faking a smile, but we both know the truth. You're pointing your finger, but the guilty one is you. 'Cause you got bad intentions, false love predictions. I'm your fool. I've been one from the start, and I can't live in the shadows of your heart. Show me a time where I have done you wrong, and give me a reason why the nights are cold and long. You're faking a smile, it looks so nice and warm. You promise the sunshine with the truth's a raging storm. And you got bad intentions, false love predictions. I'm your fool, and I've been one from the start, but I can't live in the shadows of your heart. Pretty smiles can't hide the truth.